Ala, naipit pa. Okay. Yan. Ayusin natin. Okay. Let's get the ball rolling. Bet Malu. Sa kayo dyan. Lang guys, I set up ko lang to. Natin. Yun lang. Medyo mahina internet guys. Sorry Setup ko lang dito. Mga bet mo. Narinig niyo ako mga kamets? Lang Ayan na! Kamusta kayo dyan? Mga Bet Malu. mga ka-DDS, yan. Mga ka-BBM, ka-Solid North, mga ka-Kampink, yan. Meron pa rin bang mga Dilawan, yan. Mga ka-Meta, of course, Meta. May tama, hindi naman. Yung mga ka-Meta, Energy, para sa bayan. Alright, so ito bago tayo pupunta sa topic natin today, pag-usapan natin ito na may latest na survey na lumalabas. Very objective, very credible institution ito. Really 100% authenticity. Pag-usapan natin itong bagong survey. Number 1, si Tatay Digong for Senate 2025. Yo! Yan. Yo! Of course, ang tanong is, even if that's accurate, even if that's gonna be the final outcome, pag-usapan din natin yan. Being part of the Senate doesn't give you sovereign immunity. So the question is, so what? Okay, maging senador ka, so what? So pag-usapan din natin yung kaso ng ibang senators, yung mga kasalukuyan na senators na makaganyan at medyo nag-aalala na, as we talked about it, andito na po yung ICC, International Criminal Court. In fact, umamin na ang gobyerno natin na the International Criminal Court is actually already here. They're conducting investigations and all. Now, whether sorry, nakatayo dyan. No, so obviously, katulad ng pinag-usapan natin, the International Criminal Court is almost certainly here already in the Philippines. At sa late November, there was a statement by the government. If I'm not mistaken, this is the Solicitor General na essentially inamin nila na hindi nila i-stop, hindi nila pipigilan ng ICC if they want to conduct investigation here, Ibang usapan na, of course, if they're gonna fully cooperate with them in terms of if ever may issue ng mga arrest warrants, specifically against very high-level officials from the former administrations. But mukhang there's a degree of admission that it's possible that the ICC is already here. Alright? Pinag-usapan din natin yan with our good friend si Ronald Llamas, of course. So, later this week, sa Thursday po, kasama natin ulit minamahal natin si Ronald Llamas for another R&R. Bukas na pala yan Lost track of time. Bukas na pala yan. So, bukas guys, early afternoon, we will have a proper year-ender. Alright? Pag-usapan natin mga big news of 2023 and what are the big things to look forward to in 2024. Of course, in previous vlogs, mga kameds, pinag-usapan na natin itong mga big stories of 2023 with our good friends, si Mark Gamboa, with si Kristan. We were hoping to have also a year-ender with Leloy Claudio and Ronaldo Llamas, but mukhang si Cristiano Ronaldo at saka si si Lisandro ay I'm not sure kung ma-organize namin because of logistical concerns. Of course, as you know, most of us nasa probinsya na, bumibisita na sa mga pamilya. Shout out kay Lola. Yeah, so minsan talaga alanganin yung internet connection natin. So pasensya na. I know kahapon din dun sa interview natin kay Director Pepe Joke, no, about Gomburza, which of course I suggest guys watch it. In fairness, ang Gomburza po ay nag-expand na, no? So more cinemas including in Iloilo are gonna show Gomburza. So please check it out dun sa mga kameta natin from Iloilo. And from Visayas and Mindanao region, it looks like nag-expand na itong availability of Gomburza. I'm hoping also dito sa Solid North. Naman tayo. Dito sa North, I mean, guys, si Padre Burgos ay galing sa amin. Solid North yan. Pupunta kayo sa Vegan. Last time I checked, doon sa Vegan. Mapuntahan yung ancestral home ni Padre Burgos. So, dapat mapakita itong Gomburza in the north of the Philippines. Baguio, Lawag, yan. Lahat niyan. Okay. Ito. This is it, mga kameta. Pag-usapan natin itong mga latest na mga developments. Kanina, meron nang lumabas daw ng survey from a very credible agency. Ito. So, former President Rodrigo Duterte is leading the choice for senator in the 2025 elections ayon sa Publicus Asia Incorporation. So, PUBL, capital, and then small letter I, and then big letter CUS. Yan. Asia Incorporation. Yan. International. Parang di ba yung SMNI? International. Okay, so in a statement, sinabi ng polling firm na yan na pahayag end of the year voting disposition survey showed that former President Rodrigo Rua Duterte, PRRD, got 48% of respondents to top the would-be Senate list and an impressive 59% trust rating. Wait, 59% na lang si tatay. Di ba dati sinabi nila 3% lang ayos sa kanila? Alam niyo yung sa isang sona ni tatay. Balita ko, 3% lang ayos sa akin. Bakit 59 na lang? Napakababa naman. Medyo malapit dun sa numbers ni Lenny Robredo yan nung binubuli ng mga binabash-bash ng mga ka-DDS. Ayan, 59% lang ang approval. Of course, this is a very credible survey agency na, has nothing to do whatsoever, with 48% lang gusto maging senador si Tatay Digong. Akala ko 91% yung approval rating. Diba? Parating nila pinapost yan ng approval ratings ni Tatay Digong and 90%. Marami nagmamahal sa kanya. So I'm surprised. If he was such a great president that 90% love him, bakit for Senado, which is a less complicated job to be honest compared to the presidency, only 48%. So actually for me that's the bigger question, no? So following closely is anti-crime and terrorism community involvement and support party list Erwin Tulfo with a 44% voting predisposition and a parallel 44% trust rating. So statistically tied essentially ito si Congressman Tulfo, former DSWD Secretary Erwin Tulfo. Nakausap po natin siya. Of course, maalala niyo mga kameta, na-interview din natin si Erwin. Of course, recently na-interview din natin si Senator Raffy Tulfo. So it looks like as things stand, there's gonna be more than one Tulfos in the Philippine Senate soon. But the thing with Erwin Tulfo is actually he topped two other surveys, including Okta survey. Oh, by the way, Sir Prof. Ranjit, happy birthday, sir. Yan, okay. So, nag-top rin siya ng at least two other surveys. Erwin Tulfo came out on top of the October survey. Meron pa isa pang survey, Oculum survey. Ahead siya of Tito Soto, Vicente Tito Soto, tsaka Rodrigo Duterte. Ayan na. Baka mamaya magkamali na naman tayo, Tito Boy Soto. Speaking of which, ayun na naman mga kameta, nagkano na naman tayo, nagkalat na naman ako. So, kahapon, nagpapasalamat tayo dun sa isang kaibigan natin na Bea din ang pangalan, of course. this is, no less than Bea Zubel, di ba? Alam mo naman, mga friends natin, mga sosyalin, okay? No, anyway, I want to thank her kasi, she gave this very nice, Christmas dedication letter, ganun. I appreciated that, very kind of her. So, pag, pag post ko, biglang ang natag, Bea Alonso, ayan tayo, tabi ko, nako, magkakaroon tayo ng ito, mamarites tayo dyan. Anong pinagsasabi ni Darian na nakiki-eksena? Alright, okay, baka mamaya gagawa tayo ng marites dyan. Mahirap na. End of the year marites yan. Si Bea Zubel, hindi si Bea Alonso. Hindi ko talaga maintindihan bakit siyang natag. I'm not even sure if she's following me. Of course, yung mga ibang artista naman nagpa-follow sa atin. Angel Locsin, Pia Wurzbach, yung mga ganun. No, and of course, yung minamahal natin kaibigan si Jano Gibbs. Again, my heart goes to you, brother, to your family, loved ones, my prayers with you. Anyway, bago tayo magtito Boy Soto, magkamali na. Eto, so, dun sa mga ibang surveys na nakita natin, sa Okta survey, sa Oculum survey, I think if in the Pulse Asia survey also, and SWS survey, nakita natin na consistently si Erwin Tulfo comes on top. In fairness naman, President Duterte usually is in top 5, but according to this survey, very high-level survey, mukhang eto na, on track si former President Rodrigo Duterte to join the Senate in 2025, should he, of course, choose to contest the elections in 2025, which is, of course, quite quixotic because last time I checked, the former president promised to retire from power. And remember, hindi siya nag-attend dun sa inauguration speech ni Marcos Jr. kasi pagod na daw siya, gusto niya nang umuwi, sabik na umuwi. Pero mukhang retirement doesn't seem to be an option for some people. And what we see is constant statements, constant criticism, constant intervention by the former president when it comes to key policies ng kasalukuyan na administration. Now, for me, President Duterte doesn't come number 1 in other surveys, but he has a very good chance of ending in top 5, which then again raises the question why a person who had a 90% supposedly approval ratings as a president is not, winning 80-90% of preferred voters for the Senate, which is a far more far less complicated, let's say, compared to naman sa presidency. So that begs its own question, right? And remember, if you look at the survey for vice presidency in 2022, mababa rin si Digong doon, kumpara doon sa mga numbers niya na 80-90%. I think 30% or so lang, 30-40% maximum. There was no assurance that he would win the vice presidency if ever Duterte ran for the vice presidency in 2022, which tells you na, maybe there's appreciation of what he did, whatever, right? But it doesn't mean that's forever. It doesn't mean that, people appreciate whatever he's doing through time and space. That's not true, right? And we see that in terms of his supposed numbers. Even if supposed leading siya as a senator, his numbers are just over half in terms of trust rating, in terms of preference rating, 40+%, right? Again, I'm saying, like, if you are such a great president, dapat 100%, 90%, 80%, 70%, right? Oh, meron kang universal recognition na, di ba? Name recall ka na. So, bakit ang preference mo? Bakit ang name recall mo 100%, ang preference mo less than 50%, right? Okay, anyway. Now, my point is, obviously, there's a bigger dynamic to this. Now, President Duterte being in the Senate, he could become the rallying cry for the opposition, de facto opposition rather. I doubt that Leni Robredo or any of the major opposition leaders are going to contest for the Senate next year. So if Duterte becomes, or if he were to become a senator and potentially top 3 senators, if not top senators, then I think he will definitely try to transition or present himself as the fiscalizer, which is quite an interesting thing because a fiscalizer is the position that people like Leila de Lima took against him not long ago. So as you know, President Duterte has a lot of disagreements with BBM, dun sa confidential fund ng anak niya, ang dami niyang pinagsasabi, dun sa ETCA ni BBM with the US, marami siyang pinagsasabi, on the fighting NPA and the issue of red tagging, marami siyang hanash. Pagdating sa issue ng China, relations with China, ayan, yung minamahal niyang China, province of China, yan, mayor of province of China, yan, lahat mga yan. So, he has a lot of disagreements. So, you could expect him to be the rallying cry. But, ang point ko naman dito mga kameta is, even if he were to be a senator, perhaps it could be quite an effective rallying cry for the ex members of the unit team, right? He could try to provide a cushion for people close to his heart who are still going to be in high positions of government. But the point is, if the goal here is to have some sort of immunity from potential, warrant of arrest or all the way investigations by an international criminal court, no, the Senate is not going to give that to you, right? So even if manalo ka ng Senate, no matter what's your ranking, you can still face investigation or potentially even warrant of arrest by the International Criminal Court, or you could face sanctions and other forms of punitive measures under the Global Magnitsky Act. No, so let's be very clear about this. No, so actually it is true na may tinatawag na sovereign immunity. No, remember, we're talking about international criminal court, we're talking about international institutions, no? May tinatawag na, of course, diplomatic immunity also. So yung mga diplomats natin abroad, they have a certain degree of immunity from lower level types of crimes. So, I mean, kung medyo may petty na crime or something like that, meron a certain degree of diplomatic immunity, para to avoid diplomatic crisis. Nevertheless, the concept of sovereign immunity is very important. And let's try to understand this concept of sovereign immunity. Now, the first time I really paid attention to the concept of sovereign immunity was when India elected Prime Minister Narendra Modi as their prime minister, right? So as their top leader. And as some of you know, Prime Minister Narendra Modi actually was banned from entering the United States for quite some time. He was not issued visas if you were to, plan to go to United States back in the day for a long time. I think for more than a decade, he was facing some sort of a visa ban for his alleged involvement or lack of proper intervention during a horrible pogrom, right, and sectarian violence that happened in his state of Gujarat. So this is in the early 2000s. No. So the first time I came across this idea of sovereign immunity at the highest level was when nanalo si Modi, immediately the United States made it clear na whatever travel ban or restrictions they had against him, it's going to be lifted because Narendra Modi is now the head of state. So he's not just an individual, a private individual, he embodies the state of India. And therefore, you cannot sue the whole state, right? Now, ibang usapan na, we can talk about International Court of Justice, we can talk about other arbitration bodies where two sovereign states can go against each other. But ibang usapan yun. When we're talking about individualized crimes here, the moment that, or alleged for that matter, the moment that you are the head of state, automatically meron kang tinatawag na sovereign immunity. All right? Now, some of you were not aware of it. So nakita ko nung time na nanalo si BBM, marami dun sa mga opposition na tuwan-tuwa. Sabi na, okay, nanalo si BBM pero hindi siya makapunta sa US kasi may mga kaso daw yung pamilya niya dun sa US. May mga pending cases sila, may allegedly contempt case, etc. You can Google it yourself, right? Hindi mahirap i-research yan. But I always said, no. Once you're the president of the Philippines, you have sovereign immunity. And in fact, that's exactly what the number 2 back then in the State Department of the United States said when she visited the Philippines. I'm talking about Wendy Sherman, a very high-level diplomat. She visited President Marcos Jr., actually President-elect Marcos Jr. back then, and made it sure that meron siyang sovereign immunity. So let me just explain to you guys. So, para lang, sorry, di ko dala kasi yung I don't have yung dala kong ibang laptop kasi gamit ko. Hindi ko dala yung OBS para makapakita ko sa inyo. But don't worry, I'm gonna post the link to these sites now. So ayon kay Wendy Sherman, when someone is head of state, they have diplomatic immunity and would be welcome in the United States, right? So they're very clear about it. Just to explain, let's be very clear with the concept of sovereign immunity. So you can find their definition. So Cornell Law School, for instance, Cornell University Law School, their definition of sovereign immunity, sovereign immunity refers to the fact that the government cannot be sued without its consent. Sovereign immunity was derived from British common law doctrine based on the idea that the king could do no wrong. In the United States, sovereign immunity typically applies to the federal government, state government, but not to municipalities. So you have to be head of state. Federal and state governments, however, have the ability to waive their sovereign immunity. The federal government did this when it passed the Federal Tort Claims Act, which waived federal immunity for numerous types of torts claims. So pwede kayo ilagay dito. But usually the idea is that if you're head of state, So president in the case of the Philippines or prime minister in the case of parliamentary system governments, you will have that kind of sovereign immunity. But that does not extend to other high level officials who are not embodying the state within which they were elected. So, for instance, pag senador ka, hindi ikaw yung head of state. You're a senator. You're just one of 12 elected this year and one of, 24 out there. So you don't get the same level, you don't get the same treatment, right? This is very important, and actually that's the context within which that you have no less than Senator Bato de la Rosa expressing, diba, his concerns, no, about ICC, diba? As you can see, throughout the years, he expressed a lot of confidence na hindi siya takot, hindi siya concerned. But earlier this year, the Department of Justice of the Philippines released some sort of a cautionary memo whereby they reminded certain senators who are potentially on the list of ICC investigation not to travel abroad, especially to United States or some of the Western countries which are bound by ICC or are bound by, in the case of United States, the Global Magnitsky Act. So the US is not part of the ICC, but it has the Global Magnitsky Act. So there's some level of overlap sa dalawang yan. So ito yung sinabi ni Senator De La Rosa, no? Sabi niya recently, he feels he should be, quote, ready for any eventuality. Following President Marcos Jr.'s disclosure, the Philippine government is studying the possibility of returning to the ICC officially. Ayon sa kanya, during the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Parliamentary Forum, I feel that I should be ready for any eventuality because the political situation in the Philippines is very fluid, so I have to be ready. So you have this kind of recognition by the senator and former, you know, top lieutenant of the president, no, during the drug war. As I've said, I'm willing to face Filipino courts. I'm willing to be tried by Philippine courts, but by a foreign body, I am not willing. At yun, of course, yung pinoint out ka, babalikan ko. Sabi niya, baka sabihin nyo, sisibat na si Bato, hindi ako lalayas. Pag sinabi ng ating gobyerno, sinabi ng ating korte, Bato, harapin mo yan, dito ko sa amin. Dito ka sa amin humarap. Then harapin ko yan. So, essentially, you probably said I will escape. I will not leave if the government or court says, Bato, face us, then I will face them. If it's a local court, right? If it were, a local court. Now, as I always said, one thing I find fascinating with some of our great leaders, especially in the Senate, is pagdating sa ICC, napakatapang na immunity, sovereignty, independence, hindi ako sa foreign court, sa mga Western bodies, sa mga puti. Meron pa minsan may pagka-racist attack pa when in fact, the current head of the ICC and the previous head of ICC are technically not white people, right? Karim Khan is not, quote-unquote, a European person. I mean, of course, he's from UK, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, he has an Asian background. The previous head of the ICC actually was from Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. So this idea of trying to dismiss ICC, etc., as, white men's imperialist, blah, 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 well, it's just factually questionable. Although, as I said, marami rin kakulangan ng ICC. Ang ICC napakabilis when it comes to investigation sa Ukraine, pero kamusta naman yung nangyari sa Kitang Silangan, for instance, or other kind of conflicts. So I don't think ICC is above criticism. There are a lot of shortcomings of the ICC. But remember, ICC also has very limited resources. It cannot go to war with countries. It cannot force itself on other countries. It relies on a certain degree of cooperation with member states, or even not member states who may agree with the principles of ICC. So United States, for instance, is not part of ICC, but they have their own Global Magnitsky Act, which provides some sort of extraterritoriality in terms of jurisdiction, in terms of trying someone who may have allegedly committed mass atrocities. Now, going back to this, as you remember, sabi ko the Department of Justice actually also released a statement warning dun sa ICC na if you travel to a certain country, even if sa Pilipinas, still the government is not 100% cooperating with ICC. But if you go to another country that is still cooperating with ICC, pwede ka madali. Now, again, for me, the thing is, I find it amusing that certain people, when it fits their purpose or it serves their interest, napakatapang laban sa ICC at mga ganyan na institutions, sovereignty, national independence. Pagdating sa West Philippine Sea, Ano yung gagawin nila? Aside from, watching Gilas Pilipinas and cheering Philippines against China and wearing like yan an extra size, whatever, West Philippine Sea. Aside from, performative antics, right? Ano po yung mga sinasabi nila when President Duterte back in the day was quipping that, China, you should make us, we should be a province of China. Now, some people say it was a joke, but, it's a bad joke. It's a horrible joke. You don't joke about those things. And some wonder if it were really a joke or whether it's a half-meant joke, right? You don't have to be a province of another country to be their province. You can be just a subservient country and they can more or less control your country indirectly. Ang tawag po dyan, new colonialism, right? Superpowers tend to do that. Russia has been trying to do that in Ukraine for quite some time. So Russia has been trying to control Ukrainian politics through their proxies and through Russia majority provinces in the eastern parts of the country. So we have many cases around the world whereby larger powers can exercise semi-colonial control or influence over other countries by not officially integrating them, but having control over their politicos and politicians. Obviously, we hear a lot of that criticism usually against Western countries. This whole new colonialism rhetoric is about how Western multinational companies, Western superpowers bully post-colonial nations. We can have a long discussion about that, and of course, there's a lot of things that we can point out pagdating sa mga mali sa Western countries. Western countries are also not above criticism. They have made a lot of mess around the world, including in the Middle East. I can talk about that for a long time. Pero, I just find it fascinating na may mga sobrang tapang pagdating sa ICC, independent sovereignty, tapos pag binuli tayo, over and over and over again, dyan sa Second Tama Show, sa West Philippine Sea, ayan, tahimik. Ano ulit yung statement niya, no? Sa ginawa ng China sa Second Thomas Shoal. Ano po ulit? Hinintay ko pa. Yun ang interesting eh. May mga tao tayo dyan, ang dami mga hanash about all sorts of issues all around the world, about United Nations, about conflict here and there. Pero pagdating dun sa pagbubuli sa atin, sa sarili natin bakuran, biglang tahimik sila. So that's a deafening silence. Very problematic silence. And in the same spirit, I've also criticized ASEAN. Alright? Because ASEAN, sariling sikap lang mukhang nangyari dito eh. Walang solidarity and support even when we showed support to Vietnam and other countries when they were being bullied. So yun ang context ng sinasabi natin. But just to be clear, okay, so let's just summarize anong pinag-usapan natin mga kameta. So just to be clear, so if you triangulate different surveys, it looks like President Rodrigo Duterte, he may not be as popular as before. He may not have the same trust rating as before. We're no longer talking about 70%, 80%, 90%. But the large plurality of Filipinos, more than 40% of Filipinos, at least in some surveys, say that they would be okay with him to be a senator. So that means Duterte is not super popular and loved by everyone as before, but a large plurality trust him or want him to still occupy a high position in government. Now, as I said, if Duterte were to be a senator, I think he could be quite an influential and important pivot for the opposition to the current administration as the unity team essentially falls apart. And I think that will be official after 2025 elections, although some see that unity team is already over as early as right now, and that 2025 elections could actually be a fight between two major dynasties as we speak. Now, going back to this, if some people think that having a position, sit in the Senate, gives them immunity from international bodies that are seeking to get to the bottom of yung drug war, international bodies that are trying to do the job that our own institutions have not been able to do. Because don't give me this nonsense about, we have working institutions because si Leila de Lima ay pinalay. Like, okay, Leila de Lima is one out of how many questionable unresolved cases? Right? And I'm not even talking about the EJK cases of tens of thousands based on some reports, right? So you cannot say something is working when your rate of success is 1 out of, 30,000 questionable cases, right? Of miscarriage of justice or weaponization of law or all sorts of different deviation from the rule of law. So people are talking about international bodies because, international bodies come in when domestic courts or judicial institutions are incapable to or unwilling to or are perhaps even open to collaborate with international bodies to ensure justice for thousands of people who still want to figure out ano ba talaga nangyari, anong konteksto ng mga alleged EJKs back in the day, not to mention more than 100 children na who were who lost their lives during the drug war based on the reports we're seeing. All right, so don't give me this nonsense. Sorry na lang, collateral damage, and like, of course, it's easy for you to say that when it doesn't affect you and your loved ones, but God forbid, diba? If it's easy to say that, every life matters. A single innocent life matters. All right. So we can depend on bara fourth world mindset. All right. You can do that whatever you want, but not. This is the 21st century, 2023. So the idea that kung manalo ka ng Senate, that gives you sovereign immunity, no, it's not going to work that way. Sovereign immunity applies, particularly in the context of our conversation, dun sa mga heads of state, prime ministers of parliamentary systems, and this was the case with Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, when he was able to go to the United States and be treated with all the honor and dignity of the head of state once he was elected as the highest official of the land. So nawala na yung travel restrictions sa kanya for a long time based on allegations of inaction or other forms of supposed culpability during the Gujarat pogroms. Having said that, when it comes to President BBM also, he also enjoys sovereign immunity because there are also pending cases against the Marcoses in the United States. You can just Google it on your own. Yes, they may have won some cases here and there, but there's still a lot of cases there. But he has sovereign immunity because he's the president of the republic. He embodies the Philippine state, right? So he's not just himself as an individual, but it embodies the Philippine state, and therefore he enjoys sovereign immunity. At na-clarify yan ni Wendy Sherman, the former number 2 at the State Department. Now, if you're a senator, it's good, it's fantastic, but it doesn't give you sovereign immunity. So let's be very clear about that. So let's see if the former president is gonna run for the Senate, but it's something worth watching because at the end of the day, the Dutertes are still popular. They're not as powerful as popular as before, but they're still popular. And aside from Duterte, you can also see other kind of semi-populist or populist figures, for instance, Erwin Tulfo. They're also doing very, very, very well in the Senate, pre-election surveys, which still tells you that as far as our voters are concerned, they're still attracted to that kind of decisive, doer kind of leader. We can have a long discussion about whether these specific individuals are the right person to be leaders, but it looks like yung mga ating mga kababayan, yun pa rin ang hinahanap nila. Someone as a doer who gets things done, even if sometimes medyo karinya brutal, right? So which tells you may pagkakulang pa rin ang opposition, that the opposition still has to rear a kind of charismatic leadership that both protects human rights, at the same time, sane, evidence-based public policy that actually works and delivers for the Filipino people. On that note, thank you very much sa mga kameta. Of course, yung mga nagtutroll din sa atin. Maraming salamat for trolling, for pushing up our engagement. We always appreciate that. And good luck. Talk to you guys soon. So hopefully we'll be back with R&R at pag-usapan natin ang mga highlights of the year. But for me personally, I think one of the political highlights of the year was Senator Laila de Lima, former Senator Laila de Lima, pinalaya na siya. At this just proves that what happened in the past was not only miscarriage of justice, but weaponization of law. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. Mabuhay po kayo at have a good evening. Talk to you soon, God willing. Salamat guys. Thank you very much.